Now someone who's been working at CFAR for quite a while now, Raphael Saray. Raphael, how you doing? And first of all, before we get to the talking on the Winnipeg Jets, just tell our listeners who you are a little bit.
Yeah, Raphael Saray, morning man here, 102.9 CFAR, 8-year broadcast veteran, mainly doing DJing, hot rockin', flame throwing, spinning the tunes, and then just to help out, they had maybe a color commentator and just write down hits and shots and stars. Then things happened and I became a play-by-play guy for the Bombers for a little bit, did some road trips, did all that fun stuff. And yeah, just pretty much hanging out, brewing out, being a dude. Covered some high school stuff as well. High school football color commentator as well. The John Gruden of Northern Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And it's great to be here on your fine program.
Oh, there you go. Like I said, you can check out our podcast. Not sure how many times a week it's going to be, but nonetheless, you can check it out.
Times a day. Several times a day.
Oh, there you go.
9 to 10 times a day.
Several times a day on
That's right.
FlynnFlawnOnline.com, and you can check out the Flynn Flawn Bombers game on Saturday on broadcast with Rob Hart. That's going to be 6:45 pregame show, 7:30 puck drop on FlynnFlawnOnline.com and 102.9 CFAR. Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets. 13-13-2 for 28 points. Really, almost last place in their division. Raphael, what is your thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets through about 28 games so far? I mean, they're averaging a point a game if you look as far as points and games played. But, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a team who's sixth place in their division and really not really looking forward to getting into the playoffs.
Well, the thing about that is, if usually the barometer of where you make up your ground in the playoffs in the NHL is American Thanksgiving, and we're just passing that, and pretty much it's so difficult to make up the ground with 3 points game and everything like that, that the Bombers are going to, or that the Winnipeg Jets are going to have a real difficult time, because that's just sort of the benchmark, and that's the way things have gone with the, ever since they introduced the new scheduling and realignment. Although the team is a very enjoyable team to watch. I've got my fancy TSN package, and the one thing that this team has done very well is they have developed so well. I watch a lot of Jet games, and I watch a lot of Leaf games. I've noticed that the people that the Winnipeg Jets have drafted, I mean, Trouba's a guy they just found from the University of Michigan, and they've brought him up so well. So there is a lot of bright future in the Winnipeg Jets organization, but goaltending, everybody's hurt. They're moving guys in and out with that. And they got to figure out Buffalo or Ladd, which one you're going to keep. And I think just all that, just being not good enough, not getting the puck luck, not getting the bounces that they got last year, because it's pretty much the same team. That's been the problem for the Winnipeg Jets. And they're going to be sort of frozen in that position unless they go one of those, 10, 12 game point streaks that don't really see that's in their future. But just for entertainment's sake, they are very entertaining to watch, because they are jerks on the ice. The Winnipeg Jets are jerks. You watch all these. I watch Leaf games. I watch a lot of Vancouver, who play a very polite brand of hockey. I enjoy the Winnipeg Jets because they're just mean and just ornery. They play with the truculence, and I like watching jerks play hockey. It's entertaining.
Well, I guess you've pretty much led myself to the first two questions I wanted to ask you. And first of all, I want to talk about Connor Hellebuyck, who has come in after the injury to Ondrej Pavelec, had a couple of very good games. And I think this is an interesting scenario now. What if Connor Hellebuyck plays well and Hutchinson plays well in behind Hellebuyck, whoever's the 1-2 now, whether it's Hutchinson or Hellebuyck? What do you do when Ondrej Pavelec gets back? I mean, you're paying Ondrej Pavelec a big chunk of money. But if you have Hellebuyck and Hutchinson playing good in goal, how do you deal with when Ondrej Pavelec comes back?
Well, I think that's Paul Maurice, the coach, is the kind of guy who I think looks like he'll just, you got to play with the guy with the hot hand. It's happened a lot of times that the goaltender is making $900,000, bumps up the starter. But I think it's going to be Pavelec's job to lose. I think they're going to give him about 3-4 starts when he does come back, just to see him getting back in the groove. And if he's not as hot as he is, or just plays subpar, he's going to be rusty. I think then they're going to have to go with the younger guys there. And Hellebuyck, he's a hot and cold guy, but he was a big star with the Team USA in the World Juniors. That's where he kind of made his medal. And yeah, it's gonna be just one of those things. But I think Pavelec's the guy, and Pavelec is also a streaky goaltender. He gets hot, he's gonna be the guy to beat, and he's the one who got them to the playoffs last year. So I probably think they're gonna give Pavelec at least the benefit of the doubt for the when he does come back. When does he come back? Like end of the year, probably?
No,
or
I think they said for sure through the New Year. So
okay.
whether it be in early January, middle of January. But do you think that's one of Winnipeg's biggest faults is their goaltenders are all hot and cold? I mean, Pavelec, like you said, yes, he got them into the playoffs last year, had a pretty bad playoff stint, but I mean, he's a very hot and cold goalie. Hutchinson's a very hot goalie. Hellebuck's a very hot and cold goalie. When you look at good teams in the National Hockey League, like Jonathan Quick, for instance, he's not a hot and good goalie. He's a very good goalie. When you look at the Montreal Canadiens, when Carey Price is going to be back in action, he's one of, if not the best goalies in the National Hockey League. If you have three hot and cold goalies, how do the Winnipeg Jets expect to win and, I mean, make the playoffs this season?
Well, that's why they're going to be one of the teams clawing and fighting for the playoffs. I mean, we'd all love a Jonathan Quick, we'd all love a Carey Price. That's why there is only a small amount of those elite goaltenders, and that's why, you know, Lundqvist with the Rangers, Corey Crawford, you know, he's good enough.
He's won Stanley Cups, and I think the debate with Corey Crawford is, yes, he's won Stanley Cups, but he's won Stanley Cups on the Chicago Blackhawks. You could have put anyone in the NHL on those Chicago Blackhawks teams, and they probably would have won the Stanley Cup. I mean, they got Taves, they had Sharp back in the day, they have Kane. This is an all-star team with, I think, personally, a mediocre goalie who just happened to be on the Blackhawks and win a few Stanley Cups.
Yeah, but he's not really a streaky goalie. I think he's consistently okay. He's never. Well, he had a little run in the playoffs there, but I mean, for the stretch of a long season, yeah, he'll be consistently okay. He won't be like garbage for 6 or 7 games that we've seen a lot of goaltenders do. And I think that's all they want from him. And yeah, that's what you're looking for, really. But yeah, there are. I mean, there's 30 teams in the league. There ain't 30 high quality goaltenders. There's maybe 8, if that.
Maybe if that.
If that.
And then there's a second level, and then there's obviously a third tier.
So it's like quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, it's just you kind of got what you got. And yeah, we'd all love to have more consistent goaltending that can win you 2-1 games. But the Jets have got what they got, and that's half the league right now. So that's how the Jets could sneak into the playoffs. It's just that they're not so much better as that everybody else is just there's just so little difference in the mediocrity.
Well, I guess we can both agree that the Winnipeg Jets goaltending situation is sketchy at the best of times. But let's look at their offense. You got Blake Wheeler with 27 points through 28 games, 9 goals, and then it's significant drop off. Little with 22 points, Pro with 19, Ladd with 18, and Nick Ehlers with 12 points. This Ehlers guy is going to be a very good player, and you said their draft has just been phenomenal. In a few years, he is going to be a very good player for the Winnipeg Jets. Outside of Wheeler, I mean, there's a lot of question marks on the squad. Yes, Little has 22 points. He's had a pretty good year. He's probably going to be here for the next couple of years. But like you said before, Ladd and Byfuglien has 17 points this season. And for me personally, you got to get rid of Dustin Byfuglien. That's just my personal thought. Dustin Byfuglien has to be traded before the end of the season because his contract's done at the end of the season. And if you don't give him up before that point, you're going to get nothing in the offseason. Byfuglien's going to be gone. Who knows who he's going to go to? You have to trade him now and get something worthwhile for your time.
Well, looking at the stat sheet on Dustin Byfuglien, I agree with you, but for a different way, because just you're going to have to save some money, and you look at Ladd, you look at Byfuglien, you're just going to have to take Ladd because he does more point production, and he's more of a 200-foot two-way player. Byfuglien, what he gives you isn't necessarily goals and points. He gives you ice time. He gives you like I mentioned, he's a jerk on the ice. He can play any position that you really need. So that's sort of everything in his pro column. But yeah, on the flip side, it's just going to be too much, and you're not going to be able to keep all your guys. So Byfuglien's probably going to have to get moved or not signed, or else they're going to have to sign both of them, and then it's going to be a lot of Manitoba Mises on the everybody else playing. But yeah, I would take Ladd over Byfuglien, but I wouldn't look at the stats to make that decision. I'd look at ice time and all of his bruising ability. So
as of today, you're taking Andrew Ladd over Dustin Byfuglien.
If it came to that, that looks like what it's going to come down to. I'm going to take Ladd over Byfuglien. It's not an easy choice because they're both fun. They're both the top franchise guys. But you're going to have to. I mean, Ladd may get $5-6 million, and Byfuglien's not going to be too much behind that. And I don't think the Jets are going to be able to pick both.
And they also have Toby Enstrom. Toby Enstrom's worth $5.5 million. So I mean, between those three guys, potentially if you sign all three, which realistically isn't going to happen, that's $15 million between three players who are not all-star standouts. Neither one of those guys are standout players. Yes, they're going to contribute to your squad, but they're not I wouldn't call them an A-type prime kind of player. I'd call them B and C kind of players.
Well, that's what the Winnipeg Jets are. That's what they are. They're not going to get the Sidney Crosby's ain't walking through the door. Steven Stamkos isn't walking through the door anytime. They're just going to sort of have to patch and fix, and if they grind their way out and do that sort of no superstar game that they play, beating around and kind of try to intimidate teams with size and things like that, that's the way they're going to win hockey games. They're not going to razzle and dazzle people with speed. And, hey, I love Winnipeg. You love Winnipeg. Tough to get guys to come to Winnipeg. It's easier to get people when they have been in Winnipeg for a bit than it is for get people from out of town to come in.
Well, so let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets' upcoming 5-game trip. The Columbus Blue Jackets, the Chicago Blackhawks, St. Louis Blues, New York Rangers, and the Edmonton Oilers. And a lot of people say bad things about the Edmonton Oilers, but at the end of they're on a 3-game winning streak. Connor McDavid is scheduled to come back a lot earlier than he was supposed to, and his recovery is going really well. They're in 14th place in their conference, but they're only 4 points behind 8th place in the conference. So, I mean, it's a wide open scenario, but the Winnipeg Jets have 3 really tough games in the middle of this 5-game trip with the Blackhawks, the Rangers, and the St. Louis Blues. They have to I would say they have to win 3 out of these next 5 games. I mean, if they want to make the playoffs, yes, they're in the 8th position right now, but there's a lot of season left. If they start losing games now, they're not going to win games at the end of the season like they did last year, because at the end of the day, last year's, I would call it a miracle that they made the playoffs. With how tough their schedule was late in the season, I think it's a miracle they made the playoffs, and there's no way this team is going to do that again this year.
From a good port, probably since Christmas of last year going into this year, the Winnipeg Jets is a kind of team that plays up to its competition. And when they are playing the top teams, they are playing a lot better. The problem is they play down to that lower end competition. So they can you can get psyched up for Chicago and you can get psyched up for the Rangers. And, then Columbus and Edmonton, they tend to play down. I don't know if it's an intensity thing or it's just something they can't even put their finger on themselves, or if other teams are getting up to play the Jets. I don't know, but that's been their sort of modus operandi for the past year and a half, and they really are going to have to take care of the garbage. You're going to have to get 2 points against Edmonton. You're going to have to get 2 points against Columbus if you're going to make a charge. And it's so easy to get up for those big games, but I think the Winnipeg Jets, they got to figure out how to take on the bottom feeders of the NHL.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the Winnipeg Jets are like a Columbus Blue Jackets. They're like a Edmonton Oilers. Like you said, I think they're playing on the same level that their skill level is when they play these teams, but they're exceeding their skill level when they play against these teams like Chicago, St. Louis, and New York, and they're going to have a very good series. But I want to bring up the Chicago Blackhawks and Patrick Kane. A 23-game point streak extended last night, 43 points in 28 games, 4 points ahead of Jamie Benn for first in the league. This guy he's a magician, what he does on the ice. I mean, he is hands down probably the top 4 player in the National Hockey League. If you get a chance to watch this guy, it's a treat. And I mean, to have season tickets to the Chicago Blackhawks and see this guy for 41 games, that's the price of admission right there.
You can watch it, you can see it. He is having a ridiculous amount of fun on the ice, because I think just how those superstars are. They see everything slower. They see everything more clearly. They just have better vision. And he is just on one of those tears where he's having a ridiculous amount of fun. And the great thing about him is he landed in a place like Chicago. You put a guy like that in Winnipeg. You put up a guy like that in Arizona, San Jose, a place where he doesn't have sort of the infrastructure around him. He doesn't have a Seabrook, a Keith, Jonathan Taves to help him out. It's a whole different story. So I think he is just sort of a guy who's been brought along, petulant, immature player, and they just have him in the system. They have him with other guys who they just tell him, hey, score. Because, talent-wise, he's probably up there with, Phil Kessel in terms of natural goal scoring, but just in terms of the way he's been brought up and the situations around him, he's just been told to score goals, just has to do his job, and that's exactly what he's doing.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what Corey Crawford's been told to do. Just make saves. You don't have to have outstanding performances. Just make saves, and at the end of the day, we're going to score goals, and we have great defense in Seabrook, Duncan Keith. There's so many guys on this, what I think is an all-star team. You got Kane, you got Taves. Don't have Sharp anymore. You have so many guys in this Chicago Blackhawks team. I think year after year, they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender to win the Cup every single year.
And it is the intangible of, why are they so good? They just know how to do it. They just know how to win. It's just embedded them in the past 3-4 years. And when you have that, it's tough to change the culture of a team that's been losing so much. I think that's one of the problems with Edmonton. They don't know how to win. So when you have a team like Chicago who just knows how to do it, and I think, in the slog, the dog days of late January and February, I wouldn't be surprised if you just saw them just tone it down a bit. Maybe, just play, not really go as intense, just to rest up for the big playoff stretch run, because the one concern on the Chicago Blackhawks is they have played a lot of hockey, those guys, in the past 5 years, those Taves and those Keiths. I mean, they've just logged so much minutes. So it'll be interesting to see if those old legs get weary once the playoff push comes in.
You could probably relate that to the Los Angeles Kings last year. I mean, they've played so much hockey in the last 3 or 4 years that you could tell by the end of last year. Yes, they had a little bit of a push, but they were just so tired. And you could also relate it to the Kansas City Royals of the Major League Baseball. They had such a good, probably 100 games of the MLB season this year, and then they started losing games. I don't know what they were doing. A lot of people criticize, why are they losing games? Why are they doing this? And then all of a sudden, they're going to the World Series. So maybe Chicago's going to do that. Like I said, I don't think it's a bad idea by any means, but Chicago at the end of the day is a contender. You have the Montreal Canadiens, they're 19-6. Washington 19-5. Dallas is 21-5. LA's 18-8. Braden Holtby 17-4 for the Washington Capitals. This guy he's been good for his entire career. He hasn't been a standout goalie, but Braden Holtby is one of the big reasons the Washington Capitals, for the first time, I think in a long time, have a chance of going deep into the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, he's a guy, and I think they've kind of convinced a lot of that team that they can play defense. So when you're getting, you don't need total defensive play, you just need a little bit. And when you got a hot goalie, we'll see if Holtby can keep it up for a whole season. Lundqvist, Price, they're going to be doing it for the whole season into the playoff drive. But if you got goaltending and you got just a little bit of defense with all that firepower, they're going to be a very entertaining team to watch. I'm thinking they're one of those teams that could disappoint you in the early rounds of the playoffs. But going back to all the fresh legs, I mean, Ovechkin hasn't played a lot of playoffs. He's Mr. World Championship, so he may have fresh legs coming to the playoff against you got. I think that's what happened to Zdeno Chara. I mean, you watch some of him. He's a big guy, and he was just going through people 2-3 years ago, and you watch him now. He's an old man, so it'll be interesting to see the toll of the season and the toll of the seasons have as 2016 portion of the season rolls along.
You're listening to Podcast One of the First Row Sports Show on FlynnFlonOnline.com. Raphael, Saray, Darnell, Duff kicking it with the Winnipeg Jets, 13-13-2. They're gonna have a game tomorrow against the Columbus Blue Jackets. 7:30 puck drop on TSN 3 and TSN 1290. Let's switch it up. Let's talk about the National Football League for a little bit. Let's talk about the New England Patriots. 2 losses in a row. They lost to Philadelphia 35-28 last week. Is this a sort of a tale that they're getting put back to the first 10 games, they were the best team in NFL? I don't think anybody can disagree with that. And maybe they can. Maybe I'm just saying wrong things. But at the end of the day, they were 10-0. Now they're 10-2. Will they be able to rebound this week and beat the Texans?
Well, they lost everybody. I mean, I was watching the Eagles game there. Tom Brady had to catch passes. They lost Gronk. They've lost Edelman. You can't give Tom Brady just guys off the bench because he's such a rhythm guy. He's just a look type guy. And I was watching that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. He was overthrowing guys because they didn't know the routes or they didn't know how he switches things up. I mean, this is a team that is so good when they have moderate talent. I mean, Julian Edelman's looking like the best player in the league, and on another team, or he's never been a superstar. He's a guy running back punts, and just Brady, they give him some time, and he's able to connect with him. Whoever that they have now replacing Gronkowski is probably going to be back sooner than later. Edelman, you don't know. I think it's going to take 3 or 4 games for Brady to figure out his new guys, figure out the new system, and then they'll be able to roll along. But I think they're in position right now that I don't think they're going to be pushing the panic button. That's just not what they do. As long as they get home field in the playoffs, which it looks like they probably could, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, the next team closest to them in their division is 6-6 in the Buffalo Bills. So the Patriots, they're going to win their division realistically. They're probably going to go 13-3, whether it is 12-4, whatever it is. A couple more teams I want to talk about before we take a break. I know you've been here probably since 5:30 in the morning. So
why not? Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It's been a long day. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers, 12-0. They've clinched their division. They take on the 6-6 Atlanta Falcons this week. Is this a team that's capable of winning 4 more games and going 16-0?
Well, you wouldn't think so, because this isn't the, superstar, greatest show on turf type deal. They got a great defense, but they're not the '85 Bears. Their quarterbacking has been always solid, but he's a guy who's been up and down his whole career. But it's just a matter of they've figured it out and they're putting it all together. I think they are a defense first. I think they are a team that, they don't run to set up the pass. They pass to set up the run. And Cam Newton's is dynamic enough, and as long as he stays healthy and Kegley stays healthy, boy, they got a real good shot at it. But the thing is just to maintain that week in, week out. I mean, Atlanta's, they're sketchy, and now they're the team with the bullseye on them. For a lot of teams that they're going to play who aren't going to the playoffs, this is going to be their playoff game to try and knock off the Carolina Panthers. So it'll be interesting to see if they can just maintain that intensity.
Well, I remember back when the Patriots were playing the Denver Broncos in Week 11, and they were up 14-7, snowy conditions. Nobody was catching the ball, and I was like, okay, the Patriots, whoever they play for the rest of the season, this is a 16-0 team, and then all of a sudden they're 10-2. You also want to talk about a dynamic quarterback. You can talk about the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson. 3 wins in a row, 4-1 in their last 5. Next 3 is against Baltimore, Cleveland, and St. Louis. They've been absolute trouncing their opponents in the last 3 games. Finished off with a 38-7 win against Minnesota last week. With the next 3 games, they have a very good opportunity of being 10-5 after 15.
Well, I was watching them against Minnesota, and I was expecting Minnesota to just smash mouth and go right through them. They were able to stop Adrian Peterson and Russell Wilson. I don't know what his problem was in the opening portion of the season, but boy, he's really turned it together. And I think it's the same thing we talked about there in the NHL. It's just sort of a knowledge of knowing how to win. And very interesting that Marshawn Lynch not getting as many touches. He's on the bench, and so they're doing it in different ways. I think one of the interesting things for Seattle was the injury to Jimmy Graham, who was the guy they brought in from the New Orleans Saints, one of the best receiving tight ends. And it was just kind of a thing of like, hey, let's get the best guys. And the best guys don't always make the best fit on your team. They went back to good Canadian boy Luke Wilson in the tight end position. And all of a sudden, he's out doing good slant routes and things like that. And it's really been sort of an addition by subtraction when Jimmy Graham's gone down on the shelf.
Well, I think the way the Seattle Seahawks are going right now, Marshawn Lynch is going to be gone sooner rather than he's going to be there for a long time. I mean, he's not getting a lot of touches. In the end of the day, they're putting up 25 points a game this season. Their defense has been sketchy at times. I mean, they gave up 30 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Probably lucky to come away with that game. I mean, they allowed over 525 yards of offense. But I want to finish it off and talk about probably the worst division in the National Football League. You have the Washington Redskins 5-7, the Philadelphia Eagles coming off a big win against the Patriots, they're 5-7, the New York Giants 5-8, and you wouldn't think through 12 games if you're 4-8, unless it's the CFL. But in the NFL, if you're 4-8 and you still have a playoff opportunity, the Dallas Cowboys at 4-8 with 3 5-7 teams. Why is this division so bad?
Wow, well, it's probably I'd go quarterbacking on that one. I mean, Matt Castle is a very handsome man, but Matt Castle, I wouldn't take in my Nerf football league. I mean, he's just a sketchy guy. He's back at her. Kirk Cousins, boy, talk about a guy who's streaky. I mean, he's like a guy who gets 500 yards one week and barely 100 the next. What I'm thinking is a 7-9 could win this division. And if I was Roger Goodell, I know they won't, but if I was the commissioners and the people who run it, I would take away their home playoff game. I was like, no, you have to have a winning record you could get a home game.
And that's actually very interesting that you say that with how things go these days. And I want to relate it to the World Series. The fact that the MLB All-Star Game determines who's going to have home field advantage for the World Series, I think that is horrendous. I hate that if you play a team that has a worse record than you and gets home field based on just divisions and whatever, how is that fair? And like you said, how a 7-9 team is going to get a home game in the playoffs? How does that even work when you're facing a team that could be 10-6?
That's what I said. That's why they should be punished. It was interesting even before they did that thing in the All-Star Game where that game mattered. It wasn't best record. It was they just alternated back and forth, and it's tough to do more in the in baseball because the schedule's all off balance as you only play so many interleague games. So that one's kind of I would accept an argument there. But in terms of NFL, I was thinking if you do not have a winning record and still win your division, okay, you still get in because, divisions matter. It's not like hockey or basketball.
You're not playing a home
Yeah, you're not
game.
playing a home game. We have to do something. We'll invite you into the dance, but you don't get to be with the prettiest girl.
Okay, it's very early. There's still 8 games until we get there. Who is in the Super Bowl final for you?
Super Bowl, I'm still on the Brady Express. I like Tom Terrific, and I know the wheels are falling off a little bit, but I like Green Bay in the NFC. I think they'll be able to turn it around. So I like a nice Green Bay final, and I like a little Tom Brady again for the Super Bowl.
Well, there you go. I think it's a tough call on Green Bay, and I'm going to say Seattle just because the way Seattle's playing the last few weeks. I want to see another Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks because, frankly, Seattle should have won the Super Bowl last year. Don't know why they didn't. We've been talking about it for a year. I'm not even going to stress about it because there's still a lot of football left. You've been listening to the First Row Sports Show. Check us out on flinflononline.com. And again, the Flin Flon Bombers are in action this Friday and Saturday. Broadcast on Saturday. Puck drop at 7:30 for Raphael, Saray, Darnell Duff. Have a great day.